I never imagined I'd be the type of person to walk away from a job without notice, but here I was, resigning with a quiet sense of finality. It all began when I desperately requested time off to be with my daughter, Sophia, who's about to undergo a critical heart surgery. This wasn't just another routine procedure. It was a make-or-break moment for her, a chance at survival or a future full of uncertainties. She needed me, her mother, by her side during her recovery. It wasn't even a question. I worked at a small marketing agency in Greenwood, a town where everyone knew each other's business. I'd been with the company for 5 years. When I first started, it felt like a family, a tight-knit team where everyone worked together, supporting each other, even staying late to meet tight deadlines. But over time, things changed. As the company grew, so did the pressure. Clients became demanding, and the founder, Steve Harper, who once seemed like a friendly boss, became distant and cold. He was a smooth talker who could convince anyone that he had your best interests at heart, but I learned quickly that, for him, it was all about the bottom line. You were easily replaced if you didn't meet his ever-growing standards. So when Sophia's surgery was scheduled, I knew I had to put my priorities in order. My daughter's health was my number one concern, and I had to be there for her. But asking Steve for time off wasn't something I took lightly. I'd seen how he dismissed personal requests before. He believed that work should always come first, and anything outside of that was a burden. Still, I decided to write an email, explaining the situation. It was polite and professional, and I didn't ask for much, just a couple of days to be with my daughter. I even offered to work from home if needed, or catch up later on the workload. It seemed like a reasonable request, right? Steve's response shattered any illusion I had left about the company. He didn't offer sympathy, didn't acknowledge how difficult this situation was for me as a mother. No, his reply was simple and harsh. Your personal problems are not my concern. You know how important this project is. I can't afford to lose you for a few days right now. If you need time off, figure something out. Reading those words felt like a punch in the stomach. How could he be so heartless, so indifferent to what was, for me, a life-or-death matter? But that was the moment everything changed. I quietly resigned the next day. No dramatic speeches, no explanations, just a decision that felt right in my soul. 2 weeks later, Steve called me, desperate, begging me to come back. Clients were leaving, the agency was in turmoil, and he needed me. He pleaded, "Please, we're in a bind. The clients are leaving. We need you." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Oh, you have no idea what's coming," I thought to myself. In that moment, I realized that I'd spent years working myself to the bone for a company that didn't value me as a person. I used to be the kind of employee who would power through illness, long hours, and missed family events because I believed my work was important. But that all changed. I wasn't just another number on a payroll. I was a mother, and my daughter needed me. And for the first time in my life, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I left that job, and I never looked back. The clients could leave, the work could pile up, but nothing was more important than being there for my family. It was supposed to be my daughter's life, but to Steve, it didn't matter. To him, I was just another cog in the machine, someone he could push around as long as the work got done. I didn't know how to handle it. Part of me wanted to explode, to scream in frustration, but I knew that wouldn't fix anything. So, I did something I don't usually do. I walked into his office, hoping to have a real conversation. After all, I'd been with the company long enough to deserve that much. I knocked on the door, then entered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Steve," I said, my tone calm but desperate. "Please. This surgery is really important. I can't just leave Sophia alone in the hospital. I'm asking for just a few days. I can make up the time later. You don't understand, she needs me." Steve didn't even look up from his computer. His indifference hit me like a slap in the face. When he finally spoke, his words were cold, almost mocking. "You think I care about your kid's surgery?" he sneered. "You think I don't have my own problems? This company is running on a tight schedule, and if you can't handle it, maybe you should rethink your priorities." My heart sank. He wasn't even pretending to understand. He wasn't seeing me as a human being, just an inconvenience. All those late nights I'd worked for him, all the times I'd picked up the slack when others failed, And this was the thanks I got. I left his office without saying another word, fighting back tears. Inside, I was shattered. This was my daughter, my flesh and blood, and he couldn't even muster a shred of compassion. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my husband, David. We were both scared. Scared about Sophia's surgery, scared about what would happen if I didn't take time off. But more than that, we were scared about the thought of me continuing to work for someone who didn't care about us. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to let Steve dictate my life. The next morning, I didn't just ask for time off. I quit. I sent him an email short to the point. No anger. No drama. Just a simple resignation letter. I told him I was leaving the company, effective immediately. No room for negotiation. No space for him to try to talk me out of it. I knew it was the right decision, and I wasn't going to let him guilt-trip me into putting my family second. 2 weeks passed. Sophia's surgery went well, and I stayed with her every step of the way, but my mind often wandered back to the company. Things were falling apart without me. I was sure of it. Steve couldn't handle the pressure on his own. He had no idea what it took to keep everything running smoothly, and now he was about to learn that the hard way. Then one day, my phone rang. It was Steve. I didn't pick up right away, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered, and his voice was desperate, so different from the cold, dismissive tone I remembered. "Please," he begged. "The clients are leaving, and I don't know what to do. Please, just come back for a moment. I need you." For a brief moment, a part of me wanted to revel in his desperation, to feel vindicated. He was begging. But I wasn't about to let him manipulate me again. I had made my decision. I couldn't help but laugh. A sharp, bitter laugh, the kind that comes when you finally realize how badly someone else has misjudged you. "Oh, Steve," I said, my voice calm and steady, "you have no idea what's coming." And with that, I hung up, a wave of relief washing over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't tied to that job, to his demands, to the endless stress. It was over. But little did I know, this was only the beginning. A week after I quit, I thought I was done. I thought I could finally breathe easy, knowing I had made the right choice. My daughter was recovering well, and I was focused on her. But then the calls started. The emails started. Dozens of them from former colleagues, some I had worked closely with, others I barely remembered. At first, I thought they were just checking in, but as I read on, my stomach sank. Most of them were desperate pleas for help. They wanted me to come back. The most shocking email came from Olivia, the head of client relations. She was someone I had trusted, someone who knew better than anyone that a company is only as strong as its people. She had been with the company longer than I had, and she knew Steve as well as anyone. Her email was long, filled with apologies and regret. "Please, my name," she wrote. "I don't know what happened. You are the backbone of this place, and now everything is falling apart. Steve is losing clients left and right. It's chaos. Please, you're the only one who can fix this. We need you." The realization hit me hard. Steve had underestimated me. He thought he could push me around, treat me like I was nothing. But now he was scrambling, seeing the consequences of his actions. And I wasn't about to save him. The words on the screen burned into my mind, each sentence a reminder of the chaos Steve had created. His message was a mixture of desperation and guilt, a stark contrast to the smug indifference he'd shown me during my time there. The clients were furious, the company was falling apart, and he needed me back. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had always treated me like I was just another cog in the machine, easily replaceable, as if my worth was tied solely to my work. And now, here he was, begging for my help, unable to salvage the disaster he'd orchestrated. I sat there, staring at my phone, the emotions swirling within me. Part of me wanted to gloat, to feel that small sense of victory, but I knew better. I wasn't the type to rub anyone's face in their mistakes. Still, a small, satisfied smile tugged at the corner of my lips. But I wasn't about to reply. I didn't owe him anything. I was done with the toxic environment, done with his disregard for my personal life. Or so I thought. It was a quiet Saturday. The the sun casting a warm glow over the yard where Sophia was playing, her laughter like music to my ears. I was savoring my morning coffee when the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, and for a moment, I debated letting it go to voicemail. But something in me clicked, and I answered. "Hello. It's Steve." His voice cracked, the usually confident, authoritative tone now reduced to a strained whisper. "I need you to listen to me. Please." His words hit me like a punch. Steve, the man who had once dismissed me as disposable, was pleading. The man who'd made it clear that my personal issues were insignificant now sounded like a hollow shell of the person I once knew. "I don't know what's happening," he continued, his voice shaky. "The clients are furious. We're losing contracts left and right. You are the one who kept everything together, and now I'm losing it. I'm begging you, please come back." I could feel the desperation in his words, but this time, it didn't move me. Instead, I felt a cold, quiet satisfaction. He had built this mess, and now he was paying the price for his lack of empathy. "I'm not coming back, Steve," I said, my voice firm and unwavering. "You made your choice when you told me my personal problems didn't concern you. Now, you're seeing the consequences of your actions." There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. For a brief moment, I thought he might have hung up. But then, in a voice that trembled with defeat, he spoke again. "Please. I'll make it right. I'll pay you whatever you want. Just come back." That was the final straw. The hollow offer, the pleading, it all sounded so empty. He didn't care about making things right. He only cared about salvaging his business. The damage was done, and I had no desire to return to a place that had never respected me. "I'm not interested in your money, Steve," I said coldly. "I've moved on. I suggest you do the same." I hung up without another word. But Steve wasn't done. A week later, I found a letter in my mailbox, the envelope marked with a legal team's insignia. At first, I thought it was just some misplaced paperwork. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was a cease and desist letter. They were accusing me of breaching my contract, claiming that my resignation violated confidentiality and non-compete clauses. My mind raced as I read the legal jargon, my heart pounding. I had done nothing more than walk away from a toxic workplace, but now they were trying to force me into submission. I panicked at first, confused and unsure. Had I really signed something that would prevent me from working in the same industry? I couldn't remember anything like that. I immediately called a lawyer. After going over everything with him, I learned that Steve's legal team was grasping at straws. The contract they referred to was outdated, poorly worded, and unenforceable. My resignation had been entirely legal. They had no case. But the audacity of it all, it infuriated me. So I decided to do something I had never done before. I took the fight to Steve. If he thought he could bully me with legal threats, he was sorely mistaken. I wasn't about to let him win. Olivia, one of the clients who had been begging me to return, had let slip that several key clients were considering leaving because of the turmoil Steve had caused. That's when the idea hit me. I wasn't going to roll over. I wasn't going to let Steve get away with this. Instead of retreating, I could turn the tables and show him the true cost of his actions. It was time to make him feel the full weight of his mistakes. And I wouldn't do it quietly. Steve thought he could simply wipe his hands clean and move on, pretending everything was fine, but I had a different plan. I reached out to the top clients I'd worked with directly, explaining the situation. I was careful not to burn any bridges. These were people I respected, after all. However, I made sure they knew the truth about what was happening behind the scenes. I outlined Steve's lack of empathy for his employees and how it was directly impacting the service they were paying for. I refrained from getting petty, choosing not to name names, but I made it clear, as long as Steve remained in charge, the quality of work was going to suffer. One by one, the clients started pulling their contracts. Some approached me for advice on where to go next, while others silently walked away without a word. Regardless of how they handled it, the outcome was the same. Tyline was hemorrhaging business. Within days, Steve was scrambling, calling me and leaving voicemails, pleading for me to come back. But this time, I didn't even bother to pick up the phone. 2 weeks after I sent the cease and desist letter, I received another call. This time, it was Olivia again. She explained that things were spiraling further out of control. Steve was desperately trying to find a way out of the mess he'd created, but his actions had finally caught up with him. "Please, I don't know what to do anymore. Can't you just come back for a little while and help us get through this?" she begged. It wasn't about the money or the job anymore. It was about watching Steve struggle. But by this point, I had no sympathy left for him. His ego had finally destroyed him. I told Olivia firmly, "I'm not coming back. You all had your chance." With that, I closed the door on that chapter of my life for good. It felt as though everything was finally falling into place. I had no idea how long Tyline could stay afloat without me. The clients I had cultivated, the relationships I had nurtured over the years, they were all gone. But Steve, ever the optimist, still clung to the hope that he could fix things. What he didn't realize was that it was already too late. Weeks passed, and with each passing day, it felt like a weight was lifting from my shoulders. Sophia was recovering well, and I had more time to focus on her, on us, without the constant pressure of work hanging over me. But I still couldn't resist keeping an eye on Tyline. Part of me was curious to see just how far Steve would go before he finally admitted defeat. It wasn't long before I received another letter. This time it wasn't from the legal team. It was from Steve himself. I opened it with little expectation, half preparing myself for more desperate pleas. But what I read left me stunned. "I've made mistakes," Steve wrote. "I've lost good people, and I've destroyed my business. I won't try to fix things with you, or anyone else, but I've realized I've been running from my own failures for too long. It's time for me to step down. The company is yours if you want it." I had to read it twice to believe it. Was this really happening? Had I driven Steve to the point of quitting everything? I wasn't sure whether to laugh, cry, or sit in stunned silence. But then it hit me, this wasn't just him stepping down. He was handing me the keys to the company. Me. After all the disrespect, all the rejection, it felt like the universe was offering me a gift, one I hadn't even realized I wanted. But now I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. I contacted Olivia and a few others who had been with the company longer than I had. They were loyal, talented people who had been swept up in Steve's chaotic mess. Together, we took over the reins of the company. It was up to me now to fix the wreckage he had left behind and rebuild from the ground up. It wasn't easy, but I had the experience and the determination to turn things around. We began by rebuilding the relationships with the clients. Slowly, cautiously, they started coming back. Some were hesitant, others curious, but they came. I didn't make grand promises, but I made sure to deliver. I was organized, transparent, and, most importantly, I treated people with the respect they deserved. Meanwhile, Steve? He disappeared. I never heard from him again. Part of me wondered what he was doing now. Had he finally learned from his mistakes? Maybe, but honestly, I didn't care. What mattered was that I had turned Tyline into something better, something more ethical, more grounded. The clients noticed, and business started to pick up. I was in charge now, and the difference in how the company ran was like night and day. No more screaming matches. No more playing games. People respected me because they could see that I valued my team and my clients. Slowly but surely, the company began thriving again. In the end, I didn't just get the revenge I was seeking. I got something even more satisfying, control. I wasn't just another employee anymore, not just someone Steve could push around. I had built something with my own hands, and no one could take that from me. Every time I walked into the office, I thought about Steve, and a small smile would tug at my lips. He had underestimated me. He had thought I was just another cog in his machine, but I was the one who kept everything running. And now? Now, I was the one in charge. No more begging. No more being pushed around. I had won. And Steve? Well, he learned the hard way that when you burn bridges, you don't just lose your employees, you lose everything.